Thank you. So I'm Adam. I'm the studio director of NOVAK. I'm just going to stress that this is the first time I've ever done anything like this. Helen, who very kindly invited us to create Fool's Paradise, also rang me last week and asked me if I would do this. So I'm a little bit nervous. I've filled my presentation with lots of videos, so I don't have to talk too much. Anyway, we're a design and animation studio, essentially. There's 3 of us at its core, with lots of great freelancers and collaborators that we work with. And just really to give you a good overview, I think I'll just show you our showreel. Thank you. As you can see, we essentially make large format video as our primary thing that we do, which takes in things like visuals to accompany bands and DJs, through to event visuals, and projection mapping, which is primarily what I'm going to discuss today. That is one of our primary things that we do. I'm sure most of you know what projection mapping is. If you've been around Lumiere, you've certainly seen it. If you've seen the castle and or the cathedral, it certainly is. But just in case, it is essentially using unconventional surfaces as projection surfaces. There's lots of different definitions, but I suppose in its simplest format is, and that can take the form of almost anything from a tiny little leaf to an entire fort. And the content that we create for this is, we create specifically with those objects or structures or buildings in mind, endeavoring to create totally unique and bespoke pieces of art, if you want to call them. I always feel a bit strange saying art, more designers. Anyway, however, with that comes a lot of challenges, and through the technology that we harness, we're able to kind of overcome quite a lot of those challenges. Just to go through a few, a lot of the buildings that we get asked to project onto, not least the castle here in Durham, which is an amazing place, and we're so privileged to get the chance to do that. But it's a really challenging building. It's quite dark in surfaces, and there's it's not very flat. Basically, when you create from a conventional screen, most things will work, but these aren't designed to take projections. So anyway, you get a lot of challenges involved in it and the technology. So to talk about some of our previous work, just to give you a bit of context to this. The first projection mapping that NOVAK did was in Whitley Bay on the North Tyneside coast. If you're from the region, I'm sure you're familiar with it. It's a nice wee place. We were asked to projection map the Spanish City building, which is to celebrate its centenary year. Fortunately for us, this building was fairly forgiving. The color is quite nice for projecting onto, and with the exception of the dome, it's fairly flat. But this was back in 2010, and at the time we didn't really know what we were doing as far as projection mapping goes. There's a lot less information available online. the software, there wasn't really any accessible software as such that you could, that was within our reach at the time to deliver projection mappings and things like that. So we just set about quite blindly, and one of our first big things was like, how do you create a template that's going to then, we can project back onto the building? And again, not much information out there. So we set about, and we took a photograph from roughly where the projectors were going to be located. This is said photograph. And worryingly proceeded to make content and things, and then eventually got round to the day, and we took the projectors down to Whitley Bay and pointed at the thing and pointed at the building and breathed a huge sigh of relief. This, what felt like an overly primitive approach to something that seemed so technical and so big and grand, turned out to work.
It looks so pretty. I can always feel like the Spanish city to me. When we were kids, girl, it looks so pretty to me. Like it always did. Like the Spanish city to me.
So we first showed that in the winter of 2010, and we were really fortunate. It was a really cold winter that year, and hardly anyone came to see it. But we were just so happy to have got our first projection mapping under our belt, and we're really proud of that piece of work. And anyway, but fortunately, the council that commissioned us to do it really liked it and asked us to show it 2 subsequent years. We showed it 3 years in a row, which was really great. And the first year we showed it, we were really lucky that we had a really good friend, Andy, who saved the day a bit, and he came down with his, at the time, really advanced and expensive media server and helped us put that imagery back onto the building, correct it all, and play back the media files. Andy's been working on one of the pieces here and that, and anyway, thanks to Andy that. But 2 years later, when we showed it for the final time, we played it off a single laptop with a piece of software that was designed by an individual in Paris, I believe. Sorry, Philippe, if you're not from Paris. But anyway, France. And, it was just the advancement since then we've seen within the sort of realm of projection mapping in terms of software, and that is accessible to smaller studios, designers, artists, and so forth, that enables these things has been really amazing. We've seen a lot of accessible software, computer power's got more so, and it's just really opening up the canvas more, which is the most important thing in my opinion. It's about enabling a canvas, and stuff like that. The term, the blank canvas, quite often in projection mapping is not always the case because you're limited to your creative choices as a result of the, like I said before, the colors and the structures of the building, albeit it can be quite good at. But anyway, however, as well as kind of it becoming more accessible, thanks to the work that we've been done with Artichoke, we've also gone to the other end of the spectrum of the technical side of things and been able to harness some very advanced technology, which has enabled us to do things like Fool's Paradise here in London. So in early 2013, we were approached by Artichoke and asked if we'd like to go and look at a site for a projection mapping. And we immediately thought, oh, Durham, great, because we're just up the road in Newcastle. But it turns out it wasn't. It was Derry, Londonderry, where they were in the process of producing an edition of Lumiere as part of the City of Culture year that they're having out there. So they invited us out, and we went and looked at this building. This is the Austin's department store in Derry, Londonderry, in the Diamond area. Immediately we looked at it, we're like, wow, it's so amazing, it's really beautiful, it's stunning. It's also apparently the oldest department store in the world. But this was quickly tempered with a serious amount of trepidation of like, how on earth are we going to do this? How, we wanted to do the whole both sides, we wanted to do the center, we wanted to do it justice, and stuff. But anyway, so we were really fortunate that we got teamed up with some guys called QED who are like projection specialists and are delivering a number of the installations here, or making them happen as such. And they opened up some things to us that we never knew you could do. And so basically, rather than just taking a photograph like we did in Whitley Bay, they scanned the building. They did a 3D scan of the building. And from that, they were able to create a 3D model, really accurate one. And from that, they then were able to produce what's called a UV map. Now, I was going to talk about more detail about this, but it's only taken me however many years to get my head around this a bit. So I'll try and keep this a bit simpler. But essentially, a UV map is where you take a 3D object and you unwrap its surfaces. It's illustrated a bit like this in here. However, the one that we got for Austin's was a little bit more complicated. So this formed our template. Which was great, which is fine, because it's a flat surface, and we were used to kind of working in a kind of flat 2D thing, because that's how we'd done it with Diversion and Whitley Bay. However, one of the big challenges, like I think I said before, was that with projection mapping, it's really hard to get an idea, how your content's going to translate onto the buildings, onto a 3D surface, onto a surface limit, these sort of things. And that's where the use of this media service that QED had and this system allowed us to, they were able to. So this is some of our content that we created using the UV map. So then we would send it off to the guys down in Potter's Bar and QED, and they'd send us back this. Oops. So, and when we first saw this a few years ago, we were just like, wow, this is so amazing, because it's like, it's a pre-visualization of how our content was going to get. So this is all fairly good, but it enabled us to really kind of it enabled us to sort of be more experimental, try things, whereas we would previously veer on the side of caution, think, oh, that's not going to work. We would think, oh, well, we'll give it a try and get an idea of how it's going to work. So just quickly, because I know I'm running out of time here, but here's just a brief excerpt of it actually in the real world. Sorry, I'm just going to flick on from that a bit, because I do want to talk a little bit about Fool's Paradise as well. But that gives you an idea of like the sort of the timeline of, or the sort of flow of things can go, and how labeling the technology allows you to kind of, if you can harness the technology, it opens up the possibilities creatively, and that's what's really amazing. But with regards to, again, coming back to the castle, an amazing, stunning site in such a beautiful location with lots and lots of challenges, which I'm not going into. But again, thanks to harnessing the technology like we've done with the 3D modeling, the UV maps, and wrapping them back on, we've been able to sort of, I think, really see our vision happen onto it, which is great. But it's also thanks to a lot of really amazing technical people like QED, like Andy, and all these guys that are out there doing that, because they allow people like us to harness that technology and really, allow our creative vision to appear, basically. So here's some of this works in progress, and stolen from the Guardian website just earlier on today. Credit to whoever took that photo. Thank you for that. So that concludes my brief.